Okay, here we go. Some last questions. The first question: why take 3 breaths to come out of meditation? And the reason is because without your calculators you can count to 3. And we always do things in 3. Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, 3 refuges, the 3 departments, the 3 kilesas, triple gems. That's all in 3s. That's what we do. We bow 3 times, we say sadhu 3 times. So why not take 3 breaths to come out of meditation? It's just a tradition. But if you are rebellious, then you can take 4 breaths to come out of meditation. You don't have to follow everybody else. But one of the main reasons is if you just come out of meditation straight away without a transition period, it sometimes can be a bit too harsh. Ajahn Brahm said it's like you've got a very cool grass and then suddenly you pour hot water into it. It cracks. So the deeper you're in meditation, the longer you should take to come out. I always remember this one guy. It was only a Saturday afternoon meditation session in Perth. We only usually sit for 45 minutes, but afterwards, when I finished the meditation, he was still sitting there, and still another half an hour he was still sitting there. I knew this guy. He was getting into a really, really deep meditation, and I was busy, had to go outside to do something else. And I was very proud of one of our caretakers who sat in the hall waiting for him to emerge from meditation, and she took him to a side room where it's nice and quiet. So, he could gently come out of a very deep meditation. If you really get into a jhana, and straight away, it's lunchtime, you just can't handle that. It's just too much. So if you do have a jhana, come out very slowly, just maybe walk to a quiet room and just get your your mind back to the busy world again. So that's why 3 breaths, sometimes you need longer than that to come out of meditation, but at least 3 breaths. So you don't suddenly meditate and suddenly come out. That's really shocking. Dear Ajahn, how can we see and know the nature of our mind during meditation, especially when we're at the bright light stage? The bright light, that is how you're perceiving your mind. In the Anapanasati Sutta, that's stage number 9, Chitta Patisangvedi. You experience your chitta, your mind. That's how you experience it, as a light. Remember that this is the mind, it is obviously a mental object. You perceive it as a light, it is not a light, you're not seeing anything. If there was some sort of neurologist who was checking your senses, the sense of sight is turned off, but you perceive it as a light. Because most people are visual, that is our dominant sense as human beings. So we interpret it as a light. That's the only way we can make sense of it to ourselves. You're seeing your mind. I mentioned, I think it was to somebody during the interviews, if your mind, your nimitta, is a bit dull or dirty, it means that you haven't been keeping your precepts. Basically because your mind is defiled. Now, in Buddhism they call it defilement, and that actually is how you see it. I remember the first time I gave that teaching, this poor young man who's very well known in Malaysia, he's often a sort of an attendant, he came up to me really worried. He said, I've got an nimitta today, and it was just like an already soiled rag. I said, what have you been doing? He put it on. I said, well, I don't want to tell you. We've been messing around, breaking his precepts, and that's what happens. You break your precepts when the nimitta comes up, it's dirty. That's how you see it. But there's other people I know, and they're close friends, they've been meditators, they've been looking after our Buddhist society, they stand for office and they serve, and they're always there for you, they never criticize anybody. What most people call pure-hearted people. And when they get a nimitta, it will sooner or later. My goodness, it's beautiful. The first time it comes up, it's gorgeous. Because they're seeing their mind. They're so pure-hearted, they've done such a lot of dana, donations, charity, keeping their precepts, volunteering, doing service, always there to help out. You know those people. When their nimitta comes up, oh, it's brilliant. Really beautiful. That's where your sila, your precepts, your virtue, your right speech, right action, right livelihood really show their benefits. All those precepts you've been keeping over the years, all those donations, all those acts of compassion, they make your citta, your mind, just so beautiful and pure. So when it does come up, it literally is radiant. So you're way ahead of the game. So actually that's what happens. So here's the question again, how can we see it, know the nature of mind? And that's one thing, you know the nature of your mind. The other thing, which you know when you get to nimittas, you recognise that is your mind. But actually to stabilise that nimitta, to keep it from moving backwards and forwards, you realise it's not the nimitta's problem, it's you. The one who watches is moving. That's why the nimitta moves. The simile which I developed to understand this was just looking at my face in the mirror when I'm shaving. And if that if that image in the mirror is moving backwards and forwards, I can't shave. I'll cut myself. And so if your nimitta is moving backwards and forwards, it means you, the one who's watching, is moving. So it's a waste of time trying to hold the mirror still. The one who is watching has to be still. And if your nimitta is moving up and down, pulsating or whatever, it means because you, the one who's watching, is moving. So I decided the one who's watching is to be perfectly still. And my nimitta was still. Start to understand the nature of the mind. And also, you understood the nature of the mind is that when it's freed from these five senses, it has so much fun and happiness. And also you realize it's not part of these five senses. Just like those stories of the people go underwater for days, they're not harmed at all. And your mind is totally independent of the body. The body does its thing, the mind is totally different. So one of the things you understand the nature of the mind is not going to stop when you die. It's such an obvious thing that when you have lots of experiences, nimittas or even jhanas. So the idea of rebirth, reincarnation, whether you can remember your past lives or not, you see the process. It's quite obvious it will carry on when you die. But even more than that, you start, I'll give this talk tomorrow about insight. What happens when you get jhanas? And why it gives rise to the insights which make you enlightened. Dear Ajahn Brahm, is there a difference or similarity between the meditation techniques used by the Catholic Church and Buddhism? Catholics believe in God, but Buddhists search inside themselves for peace and calm. Please comment. It is interesting to note that our senior teacher, Lee Kuan Yew, chose the Catholic way. Did he? Is he Catholic? Okay. Somebody is demeaning the Lee Kuan Yew. Don't tell Lee Kuan Yew, because otherwise you'll get sued for defamation. Is that the case? We did that before. No, so for the Catholic Church, they don't really do much meditation at all. However, there is a movement in the Catholic Church to meditate. It's called Christian meditation. I forget who it was started by, but one of the leaders is a fellow called Lawrence Freeman, or Father Lawrence Freeman, and one of his disciples is a girl called Mary Jo Meadow, because she came to Perth a year or two ago, maybe 2 years ago, and one of my monks is this very old American monk, Ekagata, if any of you remember him. It's very hard to say Ekagata, so he became known, all the monks have got nicknames. He became known as Akadaka, after the rock band, AC/DC. Now, AC/DC, that was their nickname, Akadaka, so this is Venerable Akadaka. I won't tell you all the monks' nicknames, but some of the monks have got such long names, so it's very hard to pronounce them. So the Venerable Akadaka, he asked me one day, he said, look, this lady, she's a Christian meditation teacher, she's holding a retreat, can I go? He was going to go to a Christian retreat, but I know this guy, he's just he just loves doing weird things and just pushing the boundaries. Within the Vinaya, he's very respectful, just to see. So actually I thought, yeah, you go, you can be my spy and find out what these people are teaching. And they were very respectful to him, so they made sure that he could keep his precepts, made him a lunch before noon, and he would sit there and listen and hear what's going on. But actually one of the things he told me, because this is actually where I get some inside information about their meditation, he said they were doing breath meditation, but she said she can't watch more than 5 or 6 breaths in a row. That was her maximum. So still very, very restless. Never having the stillness where you can watch 100 breaths in a row without any problem at all. So it really, this was one of their prominent teachers. You got the message there that it's very, very superficial. They never really go deep. However, it did seem to be that in the 12th century, 13th century, there was a couple of Catholic monks, nuns, who did get very deep in meditation. That was St. John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila. Because I read some of their books, and it wasn't 100% convincing, but some of the stuff they said, said, well, these people may have got into a jhana. It was indicative of a jhana, with someone who knows what they're talking about. And that made me really think, how could they get into a jhana as a Christian? And then the answer is very, very clear, because these monks or nuns, unlike the monks and nuns of today in Catholicism, they would really surrender, totally give up their will to God, as they would say. And because they were totally giving up their will to God, that was called letting go. They would really let go, and they would never get the fear. Because when nimittas come up, this is God just taking over. So they had an advantage in that way. And the reason why it did seem they may have got into that first jhana, because when they got into that jhana, they called it union with God. And if you ever got into a jhana, you can understand why they say that. In the first jhana, you just don't exist. Remember what I said, the path is, but not the traveller on it is seen. You disappeared. Because you've let go, and that part of you which you take to be yourself, the ability to choose and make decisions, the essential part of your identity, is gone. So it's like you don't exist anymore. You're gone. And something else is taking over. And it's bliss, more power than you've ever experienced before. You know that many times people experience that bliss, and they call it like ultimate love. It's very fascinating to me that those experiences, deep ecstasy, is a jhana. That's what sometimes people experience it as. They give it the name of absolute, 100% absolute love. Because ecstasy and the height of love is the same. But not like the love you experience in the world. And I say this because many people who have these out-of-the-body experiences or near-death experiences, floating out of the body, they go to the light and they're immersed in this infinite love. They feel love, and the whole universe is love, and it's blissful, and there's nothing which is rejected at all. The whole universe is embraced and accepted. That's typical of a first jhana experience when you come out afterwards, struggling for ways to describe the experience. So when these people say the union with God, you can understand why. It's not God. It's just the first jhana. There's more to it than that. But that's what it feels like. And also interested in Buddhist cosmology, that's where this being, Mahabrahma, hangs out. This guy, Mahabrahma, gets into first jhana and comes out again afterwards. There's a few suttas which describe, one of the suttas which describes this is the monk who went flying through the universe, trying to find the end of the universe, Rohitassa, the first astronaut before Yuri Gagarin. The first man in space was a Buddhist monk called Rohitassa. He could levitate so much, he decided, where's the end of the universe? So off he went. Not sort of travelling just around the Earth, but out into space. And it has some validity because it says he went to those dark places where the moon and sun shine not. Basically out of the solar system. That's pretty neat, to actually to know that such things existed. Because in Christianity this was just like a dome, and you just get to the stars and that's heaven. This guy was actually interplanetary travelling. And not surprisingly, he died on the way. Now when he got reborn, he went up to find out, where is the end of this earth? And he first of all asked the lowest devas, say, we don't know, asked the guys above us, and so he went up all the levels of devas until he went to the Brahma realm, and there the attendants of Brahma said, oh, we don't know, but Mahabrahma, he would know. And they said, where's Mahabrahma? He said, we don't know, but suddenly there's a big light appears, and then Mahabrahma comes out of that light. Nimitta again. You go into the light to get to judge, you come out of that light to get out again. So that was classic, telling you that this Mahabrahma, sort of now and again gets into jhanas, comes out again. And this Mahabrahma thinks he rules the universe. And so this monk asked Mahabrahma, said, look, you're Mahabrahma, where does this universe end without remainder? And then so Mahabrahma said, I am the great God, the firstborn, the creator of the universe, the Lord of all who has been and will ever be, will be. Yeah, I know that, but where does the universe end? I am Brahma, the great God, the creator. Yeah, but that's all right. So where does the universe end? I am Brahma, the God, the creator, the firstborn. The end. And he said, look, I didn't ask you that question. And at that point, Mahabrahma takes the monk aside. He said, shut up, monk. I don't know. But if all these attendants found out that God doesn't know something, they'll lose their faith in him. And anyway, you're a stupid monk. You should go and see the Buddha. He knows these things, not me. So that's when this monk then went to see the Buddha. And the Buddha gave this classic teaching, monk, the beginning and end of this world can be found in your own body and mind. Well, you've probably heard that teaching before, but the prologue before is really interesting. But anyway, instead of like a being a God, the idea of being immersed in pure ecstasy and love, first jhana stuff, that is how the Christians will experience God. Dear Ajahn Brahm, you taught us not to want anything in meditation, then we will advance. But if we don't want anything, what will motivate us to stay still or watch our breath? Your wisdom, please. If you have no motivation, you've got nothing else to do. That is your default state. If you're not doing anything, what can happen? You must be still. Look, the default state of this basket is stillness. Do I have to make this basket still? Do I have to say, basket, you be still, don't move, okay? Of course, that's the default state. When I don't hold it, when I don't shake it, when I don't do anything with it, it becomes still. And the same as your mind. If you don't do anything, if you're not motivated, you're not trying, you're not doing anything at all, just letting it be, then it becomes still. Because that's its essential nature, to be still. So stop wanting things, for goodness sake. Last question for tonight. When I meditated, I felt my body lightly and hardly to feel my breath. Is it first jhana? No. But you're getting close. So people always ask this question, is it jhana? Please tell me. And what many people do, they come and ask me, and say, is this first jhana? I say, no. So I go and ask another monk, is this first jhana? And say, no. Then I go and ask another, is it first jhana? No. Then I go ask someone and say, is it first jhana? And say, maybe. Yes, I've got first jhana. They wanted so much. But I saw this once. There was this Malaysian lady. She was very rich. She was giving lots of donations to Ajahn Tate's monastery again in Himmat Pen. So that's why Ajahn Tate let her stay there. You've got to pay the bills, and so if there's a rich lady staying there, you usually indulge her, or a rich man. So he was indulging this lady. And I was with her, and she said, look, I had this experience. It was fourth jhana, wasn't it? And Ajahn Tate said, no, it wasn't fourth jhana. And then she said again, no, I had this experience, fourth jhana, wasn't it? He said, no. About 5 or 6 times he said no, and in the end he said, but it could have been, couldn't it? That means yes. And so she came out afterwards and said, Ajahn Tate has just confirmed I had fourth jhana. And you actually see it happening. People want these things so much They go around to this person and that person, they have 10 good monks and nuns say no, but then one says yes, and they take that as confirmation. But please be very careful. When you start teaching jhanas, everybody wants it, and so you go to someone or other until you finally say, yes, that is a jhana, and then you feel that, that monk knows what they're talking about. This Ajahn Brahm, he just doesn't know what he's talking about. And he says, I haven't got it. But I'm very strict on this, that you've got to be honest. So you've felt your body lightly, hardly feel your breath, that's very good. But it's only when you can't feel anything in your body, you can't hear, and someone taps you on the shoulder, you can't feel them. Or if a tsunami hits, and you're sitting there quite happily while everyone else is dying, and you're happy as anything, and then when it comes out after, where's everybody gone? Now that's a jhana. You've got no chance of anything like that happening. Not what I do. I'm talking about tsunami. Chance of jhana happening, yes, but nothing else. So, there we go. That's the last question on meditation here. So, any other questions from the floor before we do a meditation? Going. Okay, so let's meditate and get into jhana before bed. Wouldn't that be nice? If you get into jhana and get enlightened tonight, you can go home tomorrow. It's a waste of time you're staying here. Or if you do get into enlightenment tonight, then tomorrow you don't need to keep 8 precepts. You can have a big breakfast and sleep and use the pool and the spa and go swimming. And you can have an evening meal because you got enlightened tonight. So that is the prize. Anyone who gets enlightened tonight can actually have a dinner tomorrow evening. That gives you some motivation.